Type 7 U-boats were the most common type of German boats with 703 submarines that were built by the end of the war. The lone surviving example is U-995 that is on display at Le Beau Naval Memorial located in Germany. The Type 7 was based on earlier German submarine designs going back to the World War I Type UB-3 and especially the cancelled Type UG. The UG type was designed through a Dutch dummy company to circumvent the limitations of the Treaty of Versailles and was first built by foreign shipyards. If you're new to our channel, thank you so much for watching. We at Smart Fusion are posting weekly documentaries and as well Adobe tutorials, and we do hope you consider subscribing as this would help our community grow and us to continue making more great videos for you. Thank you. The famous Type 7 U-boat had 5 major variants, A through D and F, with 2 subvariants for the C versions that were C41 and C42. The most used variant used by the German Kriegsmarine was the 7C, with 568 boats being built starting with 1940 to 1945. The Type 7C was an effective fighting machine and was seen almost everywhere U-boats operated, although its range of only 8,500 nautical miles was not as great as that of the larger Type 9, severely limiting the time it could spend in the far reaches of the western and southern Atlantic without refueling from a tender or U-boat tanker. Type 7C differed from the Type 7B only in the addition of an active sonar and a few minor mechanical improvements, making it 2 feet longer and 8 tons heavier. Between the two, the speed and the range were essentially the same, many of the boats being fitted with snorkels in 1944 and 1945. During the war, the U-boat sank approximately 2,779 ships for a total of 14.1 million tons of gross weight. This figure is roughly 70% of all Allied shipping losses in all theaters of war and to all hostile action, with the most successful year being 1942 when over 6 million tons of shipping were sunk in the Atlantic. A detailed list with search functions by several criteria can be found at the link in the video description. The technical specs of the U-boat Type 7C. Submerged displacement is 871 tons. The length of the submarine is 67.2 meters long, with the length of the pressure hull being of 50.5 meters. Total width of the submarine is 6.2 meters long, with the beam pressure hull being of 4.7 meters. The surface power of the submarine was of 2400 kilowatts from its 3200 brake horsepower diesel engine. The submerged power of the submarine was 560 kilowatts from a total of 2 electric motors. The surface speed was 17.7 knots with 8,500 nautical miles of range at 10 knots. And its submerged speed was 7.6 knots with 80 nautical miles of range at 4 knots. The max depth was 230 meters with a crush depth situated between 250 meters to 290 meters. The submarine as well had 4 bow tubes and 1 stern tube with 14 torpedoes, and as well 1 deck gun of 8.8 centimeters naval gun with 220 rounds. Torpedo mechanism operational details. The 533.6 millimeters torpedo tubes, 4 at the bow and 1 at the stern, were 7,552 millimeters long and mounted in such a way that only 2/3 of the length was outside the pressure hull. The torpedoes were launched using compressed air. On the outside, the tubes had covers that opened towards the ship's axis of symmetry, along with the outer casing doors in the outer hull. They were operated by transmission gears and cranks, and the inside door mechanism had a safety feature that prevented its opening when the outer casing door was opened. The torpedo tubes are equipped with devices that allow for the input of depth, heading angle, and speed in the torpedoes that are being loaded. The launching device had a 220-liter high-pressure compressed air tank, and this air was fed into the tube and the torpedo launched when the lever of the compressed air valve was mechanically or electrically released. The air pushed the piston that launched the torpedo and stopped at the end of the tube to prevent the air from escaping and forming air bubbles that would give away the ship's position and torpedo launch. Along with the torpedo launching, a side valve of the torpedo compensating tank was opened, and immediately after the launch, the tube covers were closed and vents were opened, releasing the high-pressure air inside the ship's hull. Then the piston was moved back to its initial position by low-pressure compressed air, then the tube was drained, and the inside door was opened. After the door was opened, the piston was removed, and another torpedo could be loaded by means of the overhead crane. Some subvariants of the Type 7C was the Type 7C41 and Type 7C42, and these are the main differences. The Type 7C41 was a slightly modified version of the Type 7C and had the exact same armament and engines. The difference between the two of them was a stronger pressure hull, giving them a deeper crash depth, and a lighter machinery to compensate for the added steel in the hull, making them slightly lighter than the Type 7C. A total of 91 were built. The Type 7C42 was designed in 1942 and 1943 to replace the aging Type 7C. It would have had a much stronger pressure hull with skin thickness up to 28 mm and would have dived twice as deep as the previous Type C submarines. These boats would have been very similar in their external appearance to the Type 7C41, but with two periscopes in the tower and would have carried two more torpedoes. Contracts were signed for 164 boats, and a few boats were even laid down, but were all cancelled on 30th of September 1943 in favor of the new Type 21, and none was advanced enough in the constructions to ever be launched. Although the submarine stroked fear in the minds of those who crossed the Atlantic, fearing every day and every night at sea, the overall efficiency of the U-boat started to fall drastically following the capture of the Enigma machine on U-559 on the 30th of October 1942. This had allowed the British intelligence over at Bletchley Park to decrypt the Nazi messages, thus giving them an unbeatable tactical advantage for the rest of the war. This concludes our video for today, and if you enjoyed it, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to our channel for more weekly documentaries. Thank you and see you in the next one.